The immortal vampire, a beloved topic of literature and film, and obviously wrestling. Hey, Gangrel fans, there have been so many fantastic and some not so fantastic vampire tales over the decades. A staple of the horror genre. When a vampire movie is good, there are few things that can match it. Think of your Bela Lugosi's, your Christopher Lee's, your Max Schreck's, your Klaus Kinski's, your Gary Oldman's, your Kiefer Sutherland's, or if you're a mopey brooding so-and-so, think Robert Pattinson. And more importantly, for the purpose of this video, vampire films have featured some truly great death sequences where some poor fool realizes they're about to bite the dust. So with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are the 10 best I'm dead and I know it moments in vampire horror movies. Number 10. Hakan, let the right one in. For Hakan, he's the guardian of the vampiric Ellie, and when he ends up in a hospital after a hunt goes wrong, the poor fella's face has been half melted off by acid. Not a great look. And when Ellie comes to visit him, Hakan knows what he has to do, opening the window, removing his medical tubes, and offering up his neck for Ellie to feast on. And that she does, with Hakan grimacing as his body becomes progressively more limp. Allowing Ellie to drain his body and refusing to fight back, Hakan knows he's toast, with his lifeless, largely bloodless body falling out of the window and slamming into the snowy ground below, all as his final breaths make steam in the air. Number 9. Amy, 10 Minutes to Midnight. 10 Minutes to Midnight is nothing if not a confusing, symbolic trip, complete with a bizarre farewell party in which DJ Amy's co-workers inhabit different bodies. When speaking to one of those co-workers, Darren, Amy expresses her confusion but is assured that she's not alone. It happens to everyone. It's time to say goodbye. All of which appears to be talk about retirement and leaving the company. However, as Amy faces down the coffin her co-workers have bought her, its symbolic meaning is much stronger than expected. Accepting that today was the death of both her career and her mortal form, Amy agrees that life all seems so long, only for it to end in an instant. Quite the powerful set piece. This is far deeper than what you'd expect from a dumb vampire movie set at a tiny radio studio. Number 8. Ching, the Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. In this 1974 picture, Van Helsing has to jump into action after Count Dracula revives 7 golden masked vampires. With Van Helsing's son, a wealthy benefactor, some kung fu specialists, and his student Ching along for the ride, nearly all of the group end up dead, with wealthy benefactor Vanessa bitten. For poor Ching, he's fooled by Vanessa's sweet smile and runs over to her, only for her to take a bite out of his neck. Not nice behaviour. Pushing her back onto a conveniently placed stake, Ching realises this is reverting Vanessa back to her human form. That is, until the idiot decides to push even harder, impaling both Vanessa and himself on this stake. Number 7. Tony, Vampires vs. the Bronx. You have to love a character who manages to keep their sarcastic energy going right until the very end, and that's what makes Tony's death in Vampires vs. the Bronx so great. With Tony a popular member of his community, the locals organise a block party for him when his store's on the brink of closing. At one point, Tony's paid a visit by Vivian, a vampire who doesn't show up on the store's CCTV, due to, being a vampire. And Tony tries to play it cool, but it's clearly failing. Just when Tony thinks he's in the clear, his shop's plunged into darkness. Grabbing a baseball bat to defend himself, Tony is easily disarmed by Vivian, but not before he can mutter, "You'll never get them," using his final words as one last statement of defiance from his community before he's brutally killed. Number 6. Bo, 30 Days of Night. 30 Days of Night is brimming with so many memorable death sequences and just generally badass sequences full stop, and Bo's demise is right up there as the very best. Deciding to get himself a grand hero's death, Bo opts to create a diversion by running his souped-up tractor through the town, taking down as many vampires as possible before an explosion that will kill him and any vamps around him. The only problem is, this explosion doesn't actually kill Bo, instead leaving him badly burnt and dropping him at the feet of some very angry vampires, where lead vampire Marlowe mocks Bo and crushes his head with his foot in humiliating fashion. Number 5. Montoya, John Carpenter's Vampires. From this 1998 John Carpenter flick, the character of Montoya doesn't actually die in Vampires, though kind of. Part of a group of vampire hunters headed up by Jack Crow, Montoya winds up bitten by a vampiric prostitute, as you do, causing him to turn into a vampire himself, although he manages to keep this bite hidden until the very end of the movie, continuing determined to help Crow even 2 days after being bitten. By the time Vampires comes to an end, Crow knows that he must kill both Montoya and the prostitute Katrina due to their transformations being irreversible. An emotional conversation follows, with Montoya understanding that Crow needs to do what's best for the greater good. But as a nice touch, Crow decides to give Montoya and Katrina a 2-day head start before he'll hunt them down, repaying the 2 days of service Montoya had given him after being turned into a vampire. And with that, Montoya forgives Crow for what he needs to do before driving off into the distance in a futile attempt to delay the inevitable. Number 4. Scud, Blade 2. As Blade 2 rolls towards its finale, Norman Reedus' technician Scud is revealed as a traitor, which we all saw coming. But so too did Blade, for Blade already suspected Scud to be an underhand douchebag. So when Scud and Reinhardt flex on Blade and Whistler, cockily mocking the two and just generally messing with them, Reinhardt at one point pulls an explosive charge from his head and throws it to Scud. Both of these wrong'uns believing the explosive to be a harmless dud. Deciding he's had enough of all of this, Blade reveals it's not a dud, before detonating the charge and blowing Scud to pieces, complete with a brilliant moment of realization from Scud before he gets liquidized. Number 3. Peter, Lost Boys The Thirst. By the time things get going with the third Lost Boys movie, yes, there's 3 of them, down-and-out vampire hunter Edgar Frog is approached by Gwen, a writer of romantic vampire novels who believes her brother was turned into a vampire while at a rave in Ibiza. We've all been there. Of course, this is all a cunning ruse, for Edgar finds that the brother, Peter, is actually a ruthless alpha vampire and is Gwen's lover rather than her brother, and they want to hire Edgar to kill problematic vampires for them. With the odds stacked against him and a pack of vampires surrounding him, Edgar does a genius move of pulling down a water pipe, soaking Peter in the process, before Edgar speaks in Latin. Yes, Edgar was blessing the water, thus turning it into holy water, as Peter's face switches from confusion to terrified as the water scorches his skin. Number 2. Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula. Directed by the iconic Francis Ford Coppola, Bram Stoker's Dracula is a fantastic vampire movie telling the story of the Count seeking the reincarnation of his deceased wife, and of course Dr. Van Helsing's attempts to stop Dracula's monstrous ways. What we have here is 2 hours of love, murder, and some truly terrible accents, culminating in the death of Dracula himself. With his throat slashed and a stake driven through his heart, Dracula knows he's done for, retreating to the church where centuries ago he denounced God and swore to avenge his dead wife. And here, he lies dying in the arms of Mina, his wife's reincarnation. These final moments are tender and emotional, with Dracula asking Mina to end his life, as they kiss and she stabs him through the heart. Sure, Bram Stoker's Dracula is a bit sappy at times, but it's still an all-timer of a vampire movie. Number 1. Taiju, Thirst. From the legendary Park Chan-wook, 2009's Thirst centers on Catholic priest Sang-hyun, who finds himself transformed into a vampire when a medical trial goes wrong. When he appears to have miraculously recovered from a deadly disease, that'd be due to the vampirism, you know, his congregation sees Sang-hyun as a genuine biblical hero, and amongst those impressed parishioners is his childhood friend's wife, Taiju. Skip forward through an affair, plenty of false accusations, the death of that friend, and then the death of Taiju, and Taiju is brought back to life as a vampire. The only problem being her utterly ruthless nature as she kills with reckless abandon. Despite the whole adultery thing, Sang-hyun has just about managed to maintain his moral compass through all of this, and so decides he has to kill both Taiju and himself. To do so, Sang-hyun drives the pair out to a remote field after Taiju had fallen asleep in his car, with the idea being that the imminently rising sun will burn them both alive. Following a few failed escape attempts, Taiju just consigns herself to death, joining Sang-hyun on the car's roof, sighing and sharing one last drink as they watch the sunrise.